Okay, y'all with this? Okay, this is stuff that Sheikh Dawood had written in this book. His manuscript that he passed on to me. Sheikh Dawood was financed and funded by King Faisal, another Saud family, to eliminate that story and that gossip that was taking place, because Saudi Arabia were friends with America, and this guy who was a terrorist roaming around, this vision with this Palestinian guy, Fa'ad Abdul Ali Muhammad, was causing problems and saying he was from the noble family of the Quraysh, and saying he was from Saudi Arabia, and that his name was Fahad. And the Saudi Arabians wanted to get rid of that, so they financed Sheikh Dawood, which I'll get into a little later if you want it. If not, I'll shut up, because I intended to shut up before, and I mind my business from 1990 to 1995, when your ministers started coming out and trying to talk about me and the nation of Islam. I'm building a bigger nation. I got other things to do. Morocco is on the move. We're going by leaps and bounds. We're touching people everywhere. But you want to pull and knock on the door and pull me back out of retirement. So here I am. I had much more of that story, but I just didn't put it out because it wasn't my business. I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I love everything he stood for. And that's it. I don't care about what the ministers feel, what they think. They're just people like me. But they couldn't leave well enough alone. They wouldn't tell their followers it was a generous suggestion for me to back off, so they went and rubbed me the wrong way and now I'm back out. You want more? You want it? You can see the picture of him in Chicago, right? He visited the Noble Drew Ali Temple. They have a picture of a celebration there, and it appears that he's in the upper left-hand corner. I think the date was October the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, that's right, of 1928. Right? And this was the real man, called himself a prophet. Let me establish something right now. Back then in the 30s, to call yourself a prophet was a very common thing. We had Father Divine, a prophet, Noble Drew Ali, a prophet. We had Earlene Gould White, the Seventh-day Adventist. She called herself a prophet. Charles Russell, or rather Ford, known as the name Ford, called himself a prophet. Edgar Casey called himself a prophet. Back in those days, being called a prophet was a very common thing. And in the Shriners Lodges, they reached a certain degree where they're called a prophet. It had nothing to do with the Islamic concept of prophet. Even Dr. Martin Luther King was referred to as a prophet. Noble Drew Ali was called Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It had nothing to do with Nebi and India, Nebihin and Nabawa and all of those things that mean so much today, that Muslims are in this country from all over the place, pretending they hate the country but living all luxurious, going to Disney World and South America. And now they get down from the strictest things like, what does the word Nebi mean? What did Elijah Muhammad mean? That he was a messenger. Was it a Risala, or was it a Rasul, or a messenger? You know, Elijah Muhammad is whatever he wants to be to us, because he came to us. He's ours. He's our stuff. And we can take him and accept him for what we want to be. We don't care what you Arabs think about your desert concept. Now, let me get back on this point. Now, do you know that this guy eventually caused himself so much trouble jumping from group to group, getting involved with all these different people, and he was still living in 1921. He was still living in Chicago around age 30. Right? He caused so much trouble with the American government that they imprisoned him in San Quentin. And eventually he was murdered in 1929 AD. Same year, Claude, Noble Drew Ali, and a lot of others were murdered. They were eliminating people. Project Aura, they called it. Getting rid of all these problems. Now this man there was so involved and so intense and influenced so many people, but they wanted the plot to go on. They wanted to control the minds of these people. So now he becomes Abdul Wali Farad Muhammad Ali. He joins in with the Ahmadiyya and Ikhwani Muslimin, or the Muslim Brotherhood, up until about 1920, as I said before. And he starts to visit all the different groups around Chicago. You with it? You with me? I don't think they know all this stuff. I think they just think they know. He's playing two ends from the middle. His main objective is to stir confusion in America. Right? They call him Professor Fahd, mispronouncing his name, which is Fahd, which is a Turkish version of the word Fahd, not to be mistaken again, like I said, with Fajr for early morning prayer, or Fahd for obligatory as opposed to Sunnah, not to be mistaken, which was mistaken because the impostor didn't speak Arabic and he passed on to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad a lack of Arabic, and the Nation of Islam didn't study Arabic, so they got the names all confused up and got all the characters all confused, and that worked to the benefit of the government at the time that was trying to move everybody. So now he becomes known as Professor Ford, and you can find the name Professor Ford right inside the books of Noble Drew Ali. He makes reference to him there. And Noble Drew Ali, in case you didn't know, existed before the Nation of Islam. He had the Star and Crescent before the Nation of Islam. He didn't only have a Moroccan flag with a five-pointed star, he also used the five-pointed star and crescent. He had the fez before the Nation of Islam. He used the words sun, moon, and star, and freedom, justice, and equality, and all these things before the Nation of Islam even existed. All right. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, they was founded by a guy named Hassan al-Banna, who was really from the Wahhabi sect. influenced by the Saudi Arabians. All right? This Muslim Brotherhood is the same ones today. They call them the Ikhwan. Now they're the same ones responsible for them sheikhs blowing up those buildings. They are the Rabatat, they're the Darul Iftar. They are the spread of all of this terrorism worldwide. This is a plot by these demons. All right? This Sheikh Hassan al-Banna founded his branch of the group in Egypt as the Wahhabi sect in 1745. This plot goes back a long way. He proclaimed himself as the reformer, a form of Mahdi, a form of Messiah to Islam in Egypt. At the time, gradually, them titles drifted away and he just became the great Imam or the great Sheikh. But originally, he considered himself a Mahdi. And he had his own interpretation of Islam and the Quran, a very fanatical interpretation which breeds these demons who feel it's all right to go around and terrorize the world. Right? You understand? This is deep. It came from Egypt over here, from Palestine over here, from Turkey over here, from Morocco over here. A bunch of Caucasians who had invaded the real religion, Islam, when it was in its pristine purity and had poisoned it. Now it's in the hands of a bunch of demons, and then they gave it back to the Nubians as if it was theirs. And they accepted it. Right? At least when we was Ansarullah, we identified with the Sudan, with people who were good, that were Nubian like ourselves. We wasn't going around running up on the Pakistanis, running up on the Pale Egyptians, running up on the Turkish, and running up on the Syrians, running up on the Saudi Arabians. That wasn't our way. And that's another reason why I wasn't liked, and I was always called a racist, because I was running a race for my race. I cared about me. I cared about my kind. That made me the troublemaker. And believe it or not, I got more flack from Nubian brothers in America than I did from any Arabs. All right, so 2 years after he joined the Muslim Brotherhood and also involved himself with the Ahmadiyya, which was around 1921, around age 30, this same guy, Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad, this is the real one I'm talking about, right? And he started causing all kind of problems in American government, right? He joined this anti-American group known as Pan-Arabism, I think they call it, Pan-Arabism. They are a Palestinian group, which is a Hezbollah and all those guys. They're revolutionary movements, typical of that time, right? They were very angry. It was about the fact that the United States was approving the plan for Zionists and was giving them their own state in the United Nations. So they planned to sneak in here and disrupt this country's system. And also it linked into the Nazis, because the Nazis are the only ones who would finance them, because the Arabs didn't have no money. So there is a Arab, Turkish, Syrian, Nazi involvement here. Okay, let's go on now. One of their main bases of establishing stuff is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You can go look it up. They start setting up Islamic universities there. All of these are part of the plot. Now, because of Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad's involvement with all of these groups, he managed to get himself arrested several times between 1926 and 1929. Upon his final and fatal arrest, which is in 1929, he went to San Quentin, as I said before, the penitentiary in California, where he was put to death. They eliminated him. Later, they came up with a plot to replace him with what I refer to as the imposter. Again, this was the first one who was eliminated. The real one, named, who now they call Master Farad Muhammad. Now let's walk on back. Let's work and see where that goes. The second one, the imposter, he arrived in Los Angeles, California in the year 1914 AD. Wallace Dodge Ford was his real name. All right, W.D. Ford. They also call him the Prophet. Some people call him. All right, now check this out now. I'm going to be running on for a while, so you got to be with me. I'm going to give you a whole history right here. Which later he just became known as Ford. So he became, his real name is Wallace Dodge Ford, a typical British name. Then later on he becomes W.D. Ford. Notice they know he's not W.F. Muhammad like 1 to 36, but W.D. sneaks in there. Why all these name changes? Why all these shit? Because people are changing. And y'all talk about my name changes? I'm the same person.